I'm gonna say this in every video for like a week. Yes, the bangs are new. Also, I have my bookshelves back. I know you're here for the Leviathan Wakes review, but I just have to say how excited I am to have my bookshelves back. We were back in Iowa for 2 weeks, but we're actually moving, and so I have to pack up all these books, and I'm really sad about it, but I have them back for at least a few days. I have missed them so dearly over the 4 months we've been traveling, and it's just so nice to have them as my background again, instead of just a blank wall or my bed. Anyways, Leviathan Wakes. Leviathan Wakes by James S. A. Corey is a sci-fi epic tale often called an interplanetary adventure, and as far as I know is one of like the greatest sci-fi epics of all time. I could be wrong, but at least that's the impression that I've gotten so far. I went into this book completely blind. I did a reading vlog for it a couple weeks ago, so if you want to know my spoilery thoughts, go watch that. But today I just wanted to give a quick review of general thoughts, non-spoilery things that I thought about this book and whether or not you should read it. To get the cat out of the bag and away from the room, I loved this book so much. I kind of knew that I would going into it because it seems like my type of story, but I actually enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. Leviathan Wakes follows two main characters that split the plot pretty evenly. One is named Holden and one is named Miller, and those are their last names. They have first names. Do I remember them? No, I do not. It is also possible that I mixed them up in my head, but we're just gonna go with it. Holden is the captain of a spaceship crew of people that were originally water harvesters. Something devastating happens within the first couple chapters of the book, and this crew is kind of set adrift in space. They have no real place to go. They have a mystery to solve, and they're just doing life together, trying to survive with one another. Miller is a kind of washed up cop. He's a divorcee, he has a drinking problem, he's not as good at his job as he used to be, and he was definitely not my favorite perspective to follow, but that typical character archetype is not my favorite. What is the world of Leviathan Wakes? Leviathan Wakes is interplanetary sci-fi, which means that the humans of Earth have colonized the planets in our solar system. Earth is still the main original home planet, but Mars has a colony of humans living there all over the planet, and then the asteroid belt actually has a lot of colonies in it as well, because most of the planets in the outer solar system are not actually habitable. They're gas giants, etc. They're too difficult to actually put settlements on. Instead, what humans did was build like space stations into asteroids. So they tunneled inside, so there's a physical component to it. It's connected to a gravity, but it's not a planet, and it's not just a space station floating out in space on its own or orbiting a planet. It's actually on an asteroid. The reason why this is so important to understand is that Leviathan Wakes actually has a lot of political plot points. There is a form of racism or prejudice present between the Earthers and the Martians and the Belters, the people that live closest to the sun and the people that do not. There is a biological component to this, as the people that grew up on the belt have their bodies altered by a different source of gravity than the Earthers or the Martians. This is just one level of this incredibly faceted storyline, and it plays a huge role actually in the other plot lines that we follow throughout the story. One of those plot lines is about a missing ship. So a ship went missing and all of the crew disappeared. No one has heard from them, and there is one person particularly from this original crew that's actively being sought for. Miller, our detective over here, is kind of doing a missing persons search for this one character from this ship. Along with this, there is civil unrest being stirred up on Miller's home asteroid thing. It's not a planet, but Miller's home. He lives on an asteroid. He is a belter. There is civil unrest being stirred up on his area, and a lot of information has been leaked and shared to kind of pit Earth and Mars against the belters in a war. So you not only have a political drama, you have a space battle war between humans, and you have individual conflicts between just regular people. There really is so much to the story, and I don't think that I've gotten it all, but I'm going to move on to the next part because I could talk about the plot forever because there's just so much going on. The number one reason that I loved this book, actually there are two reasons. I'm going to say the two reasons that I love this book are, one, the crew that I mentioned, that they're out in space, they're kind of adrift, they don't have a place to go, they're searching out a mystery. I loved the characters of that crew. I hear people talk about this all of the time, about found family and fellowship dynamics in books and how it's their favorite like trope or writing tool, and I couldn't think of anything other than like The Lord of the Rings that I really loved a book that had this in it, but Leviathan Wakes was totally that. The dynamics of the crew were so lovable and fun, but also loyal and strong and encouraging for one another, and their banter was just great, and the way that they loved each other especially was the best part of this book in my opinion. Secondly, I loved the way that the writers, James S.A. Corey is a pen name for two authors writing together. They're both pretty famous for their own stuff, but together they have written this Expanse series. And the way they wrote this story was so good because I'm a person that has a difficult time shutting off my critical brain while I'm reading. Often when I'm reading a book, I'm actively trying to figure out where the plot is going, to call it, or to pick out plot holes or figure out what's going on without the help of the author. And it really takes an immersive writing style, a intense way of getting me drawn into the story for me to set that aside. And Leviathan Wakes did that. About a third, maybe a halfway through the book, I completely stopped trying to guess what was happening. I was so immersed in the story that I stop trying to guess, and that's the only way I can describe it, is I wasn't thinking about the end and nothing was really predictable to me because I wasn't worried about trying to predict the ending. That's so refreshing for me. I feel like every book I read, it's either predictable or it's just predictable because I'm thinking about it too hard, you know? This made it a much more enjoyable reading experience for me because there were a ton of twists at the end of the book, and they were so good to me, and I was so shocked and just engaged in the story because of this writer's ability to immerse me in the story. I will say I had a couple of issues with the story overall. I already told you that Miller's perspective is not my typical favorite that I gravitate towards. I don't pick up detective stories a lot. I don't necessarily like reading the type of character that he was, and so at the beginning of the book it was definitely difficult to get through his chapters. Luckily though, it switched back and forth between Holden and Miller quite frequently, so I wasn't too disengaged very often. I did fall asleep while reading it once during a Miller section, so I do have to point that out. This is also a mostly male cast. I believe we have 2 female characters and only one with significant screen time, and she is a love interest. So if you're looking for a sci-fi story that has a lot of great female representation, this is not it. And also, even though this is an interplanetary adventure and the solar system has been colonized by Earthers, it felt very American. The culture of the different planets and the space stations that we went to was all very American. The only real accents that were talked about was a Texan accent. And I will say that the writers tried to throw in a bit of conversation about how ethnicities kind of molded together and combined over the hundreds of years, but it felt almost kind of like a weak bit of the world building. But I do know that this is an 8 or 9 book series, so I could get more of that moving on, but it did strike me just how American the book felt, and that's kind of unrealistic when you're in space and the solar system. There really should be a bit more representation of cultures other than the ones from the US. So quick interruption, I realized I forgot something to talk about that I mentioned in my vlog that I would say in the review. I specifically remember being vague about the way that James S.A. Corey, the writer duo, writes conflict. They do this thing where they tend to build in intensity towards a climax moment of conflict, but then right before the big moment is supposed to happen, the tension kind of fades away, whether it's by an interruption or a different solution or someone coming in with something new to say or a new thought to introduce. And this actually ended up bugging me after a bit because I kept getting tension built up for a conflict and then no conflict ever happening. And I guess it kind of helped build intensity towards the end of the book, but for the majority of the time, I really just started to get annoyed that every time I felt like we were going to get a big moment of conflict, it would just dissolve. And I think it actually helped them in their execution of what they were trying to do, but it also was a tidbit annoying, so if that's something that tends to bother you, just keep that in mind. I could go on for a lot longer, but I'm kind of scared too because I don't want to give too much away. Like I said, I went into this story completely blind. At the beginning of the book that I had, the very first page, you open the cover and there's a page, and it had a blurb from a section of the prologue. And I read that first when I first bought the book, and that was all I knew about this. So I kind of want others to have that same experience, because I think that contributed to my enjoyment of this story, was having zero idea what was happening, trying to figure out, is this an alien story? Is this just a human story? What's going on? What is this mystery? Where does it come from? Are we gonna have space battles? I don't really know. I really had zero understanding of what to expect, and I want that for you. And by you, I do mean you. I think that this book was good enough. It was well written. It did not have as much problematic things in it that it's worth a shot for most readers, I would say. I did not go full 5 stars and say everyone needs to give this a chance, because it was a little bit slow pacing wise, and I think that there's probably more issues there that I didn't pick up on just because I enjoyed it so much. So I didn't go full 5 stars, but I did go 4 stars, because what that typically means for me is I think it was above average in intent and execution, and I think it would be a great crossover book for someone looking to explore the genre. I have just found a love for sci-fi this past year, and I don't even have it fully fledged. I've only read like maybe 5 or 6 sci-fi books in the past year, but I really enjoyed it, and I felt like it was easy to read. The writing style was not too like intense or heavily mechanical or technical, and the plot was engaging and not too over the top philosophical. So I think this could be a great crossover book if you're looking to read more sci-fi and you don't know where to start. Just because it is an 8-book series, do not let that intimidate you. I actually found that Leviathan Wakes read almost like a standalone. At the very end of the book, in the last 100 to 50 pages, there is something that happens that sets up for the rest of the series, but other than that, it could 100% be a standalone. So if you're looking to not get yourself entrenched in an 8 or 9 book series of sci-fi where the books are 600 to 800 pages a piece, don't worry, just pick up Leviathan Wakes and read it as a standalone. And I think you'd still have just as good of a reading experience, maybe even a better one if you're not thinking about how this is going to affect a greater world in the future. As you can tell, I really enjoyed this book, and I want to talk to people about it. I know it's quite popular. I know it was released a long time ago, so I may be behind the curve on this, but I want to talk to people that have read The Expanse. So if you have read it, or not The Expanse, just Leviathan Wakes, we can start there. Maybe you haven't read the whole series, maybe you've read 3 or 4 books, but I want to talk Leviathan Wakes with you. So make sure you leave a comment down below. Let me know who your favorite character was from Leviathan Wakes if you've read it before, and I will comment mine below as well, and we can talk about characters in this book, because even though I'm not a specifically character driven reader, and I don't think the characters in this book were like the most developed, they were multifaceted and they weren't one-dimensional, and I think that they had a lot of personality and heart. So I want to talk favorite characters just from book 1. No spoilers for the rest of the series, please, because I want to read it this year. The rest of it, hopefully I can get the whole series read this year. I don't know, it depends on how finances work. I mean, come on. But if you have not read Leviathan Wakes and now you want to pick it up because of my gush review, let me know as well. I'd love to go along with you on your journey and have you update me as you read the plot and how it intensifies. If you want to see my real live time reactions, go check out the reading vlog. It's not too long of a reading vlog, and I've got a little bit of fun b-roll in there. My dog shattered a glass with her tail, so that's kind of a fun thing that you can look forward to in that vlog. It does have some spoilers, nothing too crazy. I think about halfway through the book I start going more spoiler free, but if you want to check that out, please feel free to. I'll have it linked. Is it up here? Is it up here? I don't know which side it's on. I'm going to cut myself off before I give away too much of the book. Thank you guys so much for watching my review of Leviathan Wakes. If you liked the way that I talked about this book or this book in general and want to see more of my reviews, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss. I'm kind of trying to branch out in my reading this year, and will be reading a heck ton more sci-fi. Definitely will be reading the rest of The Expanse, vlogging my experience, reviewing each individual book, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything. I hope you guys have a lovely day and enjoy the book that you're reading. I will see you in the next video.